So for our fortune ball, what are these? Fortune teller balls? Oh my God. For our crystal balls, we have a couple silicone molds. We're gonna fill the bottom part with the dark color, and then I'm gonna try and do a clear layer here with an opaque back to make the crystal ball part actually look three-dimensional, I suppose. So I've got these soap leftovers for my crystal ball. I love using soap scraps for extra projects. So when you shave off your soap, save all those shavings because you can use them for other projects. So I have some leftover black here as well as some plain white melt and pour soap. I also have some shavings left over from a clear soap. So we're gonna use that for our glass part of the crystal ball. I'm going to add some of this enchanted mica to the black just to give it a little bit of glitter. I don't know if you can see it too well, but it's got some sparkles in there, and I'm just gonna add it. So to do that, we're just going to, oh yeah, you can see it a little better there. We're just gonna take a little bit of the mica, just a bit, not too much. I'm gonna put it into a shot glass. And I'm just gonna add a little bit of rubbing alcohol into the mica before we add it into our soap after we melt it. So I just use a chopstick. I use chopsticks for a lot of stuff when I'm making soaps. And we're just gonna mix it together so it's a nice liquid form. That way we don't get any mica chunks in our soap bars. Okay, so let's melt this soap and pour it into our molds. So I've just put this in for 10 seconds. As you can see, there are some clumps in there still, so we're gonna melt it further. You just gotta be careful when you're melting melt and pour because you do not want it to boil. That will affect the quality of your soap, and I find a lot of dewdrops to it after you're done making it, which is not a big deal. It's more of an aesthetic, but I like my soaps to stay gorgeous. So we're just gonna pop this in here for a couple more seconds just to get rid of these extra little chunks that you can see there. So this has melted, it's quite steamy. I'm just gonna give it a little stir. And then when it's all liquid, that's when we can add our extra colorant. So I'm just gonna add this in here. I might even want some more, but let's see. Yeah, I definitely want some more. It's still looking quite gray. So let's add a little bit more of our pigment. We gotta do this fast before our soap cools. I find the less that you microwave your melt and pour, the better. Okay, we'll add a little bit of ISO in there. Okay, that was a lot, but whatever. We'll make it work. So I'm just gonna stir this and pour it into our black. And that's making a much nicer color now. Very sparkly, darker. Okay, let's pour into our molds when this is still hot. So first thing, I'm gonna spray our mold with ISO. This prevents any air bubbles in your mold, which is not a big deal, but once again, it's just cosmetic. So I'm just gonna swirl this and we're gonna pour. Let's go. Nice and slow. I don't want it to cover where I want my clear to go. Perfect. Let's do the other one. Oh no! I poured a little too fast there, but we might be okay. All right, we're good, we're good, we're good. Okay, so we'll just leave the extra aside. Who knows, maybe I'll use it for something else later. So now we're gonna let this cool before we pour our crystal clear layer. I'm gonna spray it to get rid of any air bubbles. And we'll give it a couple minutes just to set up, but not fully, but because we need this part, the clear part, to adhere to what we just poured. So when we're waiting for our molds to dry, I like to just check them, see if they're still watery. See, I give them this little tap and they've still got a little bit of jiggle in them, so they're not quite ready yet. In the meantime, I pulled out some Twinkle Rose glitter. You can see it here. And I've once again just added a little bit into a shot glass with a little bit of ISO in there. And we're gonna pour that into our clear layer of soap as soon as we're ready to pour. Okay, so I've melted our clear. I'm gonna add in our glitter. This will be really fast because it's just a tiny, tiny bit of soap and it will dry quickly. So we're gonna go spray on our molds and just a little bit on each will do. Alrighty, there we go. So now I'm gonna cut up some plain white and we're gonna put it behind here, which is gonna make our crystal ball look really great when we pop these out. So let's cut up some more soap. All right, so I've melted this plain white here. Sometimes if you have a couple really small chunks, stirring it when the soap is still hot will melt those little stragglers for you. Instead of popping the whole thing back in the microwave, try giving it a stir first. So this soap is still really hot. I can feel it coming through the silicone container here. By the way, these silicone containers are amazing. They come in a set of 3 from Amazon. The soap residue that's left in peels off amazingly. They're great because you can squeeze them to make them go into any shape. If you're into making soap, I highly recommend them. And I can link you to the Amazon link as well if you like it. Okay, so this is still pretty hot. I'm gonna keep stirring it to cool it down. A little spray of ISO to get rid of any bubbles that I've created during my stirring. Perfect. This is cooling down quite nicely. Okay, let's give it a go. So I'm gonna spray ISO into here to get rid of the bubbles I've made. I'm gonna spray ISO into my molds to stop bubbles as well. And let's pour. All right, and this one. There we go. Seal it with another spray. And now we'll let these dry. Okay, so while we wait for our molds to cure and dry, we are going to be cutting up soap for the rest of our bars. We're gonna use this Crafter's Choice basic rectangle molds. On my molds, I usually write how much fragrance oil and how much soap is needed for the mold. So here I need 6.5 ounces and the fragrance oil between 3.22 and 5.7 grams. For a medium scent, that's what I usually aim for. I like my soap to smell good, but not overpowering. So that's why I go for that medium setting. Okay, so now that our soap is all cut up and ready to melt, we're gonna prepare our fragrance oil as well as our micas for the rest of our bar. So fragrance oil is a little bit sciencey. If you are using a fragrance, it's best to make sure that you check to see if it has any vanillin in it. Vanillin is the vanilla scent and it can brown your soap, and no one wants a brown bar of soap. So we have some vanilla stabilizer here for melt and pour soap that we are gonna add to our fragrance. So as we are gonna make 2 bars, we are going to weigh out, let's say about 6 grams total for our 2 bars of fragrance oil. So let's weigh that right here. Now, because it has vanilla in it, we are going to add our stabilizer. This scent only has 1 to 5% vanillin, so we are going to add just half of our total fragrance of vanilla stabilizer. All right, so we're done with our vanilla stabilizer. We can put that aside. So now we're gonna stir our stabilizer in with our fragrance oil. You need to do this at least, I think 2 minutes before you apply it to your soap to make sure that everything binds together. Next, we're going to pre-mix our micas. So today, because it's a Halloween type soap, I've gone with a purple. It is a neon purple, but however, as we're adding it to an opaque white soap, it won't turn out this vibrant. And hot tip, you don't want it to turn out this vibrant, especially in a white soap like this, because then you're going to have mica coming out in your shower, in your suds, and it might even stain your tub or your washcloths. So less is more when it comes to mica. We're also going to add some of this glittery gold in here. This is called Super Sparkle Light Gold. Purple and gold always looks great together, and who doesn't love a little bit of sparkle? This is an eco-friendly, biodegradable glitter, so we aren't doing anything nasty to the earth. Okay, so let's measure out some of this. I'm going to use a bigger container this time for the fragrance. For the mica, because we're gonna do 2 big bars, we're gonna need quite a bit. I also have with me this deluxe cordless mixer. This I got from Amazon for like, I don't know, $9 or something. And it's great for mixing your micas. That way you don't get any clumps in your soap, which we don't want clumps of mica powder in our soaps. A, the color doesn't distribute as evenly, and B, you might come across a mica chunk in your soap bar in the middle of using it. All right, so let's get to work. So I am just gonna eyeball some of this powder. I'm just gonna use a knife to scoop it up, and start slow with your mica. You can always add more. Okay, so let's put this purple in here. Maybe a little bit more because we're doing 2 bars. Okay. Then we're gonna add our Super Sparkle. And I don't wanna get this purple from this knife into my gold jar, so I'm just gonna tap some in here. That looks great. So now let's add some rubbing alcohol to break up our mica powder before we add it to our soap. So I've just poured a little bit in here, not too much, and we're gonna use our whisk. And I'm gonna cover this with my hand to make sure that I don't get purple all over my kitchen. Wow, that is purple. Got it all over my hand. And check it out. All right, so now we are prepared. We have our mica ready. We have our fragrance oil ready. So now let's melt our soap, mix everything together, and put it together with our molds. Speaking of molds, actually, let's check ours out. So here are our dried crystal balls. Let's see what they look like underneath. So even going on the other side, I can see they're looking pretty good. So let's check it out. Ooh, there's one crystal ball. Very cool. Now let's do our other one. Gorgeous. Okay. So when I pour my molds, I like to put my mold on top of a piece of parchment paper. This way, if I need to move the mold, I easily can, because once your soap mold is full of wet soap, picking it up like this to move it is not going to be ideal. So put something on that it can slide around with, that way you can move it if necessary without damaging your soap. Let's melt our melt and pour. Our soap is liquid. So I just put it in for a couple 30-second blasts, stirring between blasts to make sure I break up any melted pieces of soap that we might have that are still chunky. Okay. So, as it is very hot still, we're gonna wait to add our fragrance oil a little bit. We don't want to ruin the fragrance. So let's just stir up our mica to get anything that might have been left on the bottom back into that ISO that we have in there. All right, and let's pour. And then I'm going to use the ISO to spray out any leftover excess mica that might be in this container. And that color is looking pretty good. Not too purple, which is great. Okay, and we are gonna try something different with our molds. So usually when I'm doing an embed like this, I will pour the whole soap, let it almost dry, and then add a tiny layer and then pop this guy on top. Today, I'm gonna try something different, where I'm gonna pour a tiny bit of this purple soap around this so that it's facing down. This is because I want all the glitter that we put in our soap to sink down to the bottom. So this is the top of the soap. So we're gonna put this face down, pour a little bit of soap around it just to create a seal. And that way, all the purple soap doesn't fill up this cavity that we have here in our fortune ball. So let's give it a go. I'm just gonna grab a spoon because I don't want to put too much of this soap in here right now. Just enough to create a seal around my embed. And that way it will stay where it's supposed to be when we fill up the whole mold and it doesn't float to the top. All right, let's try this one now. Just pour it around the edges. And we're just gonna let that dry for a bit. And a soap layer this thin does not take very long to dry. So it will literally only take a couple seconds or maybe a minute or two. Once again, let's remix our fragrance oil just because we have the vanilla stabilizer in it, and it does separate if you leave it for too long, and we want that to be nice and blended. Now let's add our fragrance oil to the rest of our soap base. And once again, that's pumpkins and praline that we are using today. And oh my gosh, it smells amazing. Perfect for fall. So we're just gonna mix that into our soap. Mix it really good. This first one that we did looks like it's already pretty good to go. Some parts of it are dry, some are still sticky. This one still looks a little wet. Yeah, that's all right. All right, we're gonna spray with ISO. And wish on a star, guys. Hopefully this doesn't float to the top and it's sealed down enough for my dreams to come true. All right. All right, we have a bit extra, so I'm just gonna pour it into an empty cavity and let it dry, and we can reuse it for a future project. Let's spray the bubbles away with a little bit of ISO. And we've poured our bar of soap. So now we wait, and then we'll unmold it and see if everything went according to plan. Okay, so today is the next day and our soaps are dry, so let's pop them out of the mold and see how they turned out. Perfect, so these look great. They actually turned out better than pretty good. So we've got a little bit of the purple here that went on the top of our embed, but that's okay. We're gonna use a knife and just peel that away. Now we're gonna use a potato peeler. This one I just got from the dollar store. It's just a plastic blade, and we're gonna use it to shave off the edges of our soap. This way it's a little bit easier to hold, and also it just looks a little bit nicer and cleaner.